take a quick walk through here and highlight a good example of what we're doing with these irregular gaps, and then what the end goal would be. So this is, I'm sure you can probably hear in the video, the harvester running behind me. He just finished up on cutting this gap yesterday. There's still a couple of oversized trees too big for the harvester that we'll cut with the chainsaw, but you can see all the blue permanent retention trees. Some of the others, like aspen right here in front of me, will just stay, just not merchantable wood, but didn't need a waste flagging tape on it. This gap's about a 0.15 hectare sort of thing, so we've got, you know, a bunch of retention trees, lots of good seed sources all around from the edge, and the hope is just to recreate what would be, you know, a small wind event. Lost a bunch of trees here in a windstorm or a hurricane or anything. And the goal would be to get some good regeneration started here within the gap. And you know, we'll continue to break this stand of trees up over time. We might be back in 15 or 20 years to expand on these gaps or put a few new ones in here, there, elsewhere. Might be sooner, might be later. Just really depends on how it responds. You'll see, you know, even within the gap here on the forest floor, all kinds of nice red spruce starting to come in, which is what we want to see. It's a bit of a mixed wood forest. There's some hemlock here, but with hemlock woolly adelgid right down the road, we're going to try and manage a little bit away from the hemlocks. We'll still, you see, I get a few of them marked. They're reasonably healthy looking hemlocks that you know, we may landowner may choose to treat some of them, but we'll see what happens when it gets here. See lots of red maple coming along. There's very small amounts of yellow birch in here. Hopeful that maybe we'll get some yellow birch seeding in. I don't see any within this gap, but there's some beautiful, might be a little hard to pick up in the camera, but there is a nice white pine. There's some beautiful, beautiful white pine in this woodlot. Would love to see a bit more of the pine start to come into this stand here too. What I was hoping to highlight here is, as we come out of this gap, just come over across this landowner's got some beautiful groomed off hiking trails and stuff all through the woodlot. Really, really neat. This one was just cleaned up. It gives them good access. We're not using it for the harvest this time. There's still, the soils are not very settled, I guess, but eventually provides really good access forwarding trails for smaller equipment like what Mitch and the crew with Atlantic Tree Solutions are using here. So someday these would be nice forwarding trails. But as we come across, you can start to see what was a natural gap that was created. So this would have been just a few trees died. Looks like there's a bit of fir in here that kind of is on the ground, probably just died through natural senescence, just got old, and maybe a few other trees blew down, but you can see it created a nice small little gap here in the forest. Not everything came down, still some, you know, there's some hardwoods here. Red maple is actually a nice yellow birch in behind it. Some red spruce stayed standing in the gap, and just look at the regen that's coming along in through here. All kinds of these nice tall white pine coming, and because there's partial shade in here, I really don't see any sign of white pine weevil happening in here. Just tons and tons. I mean, this is perfect conditions for red spruce, obviously. See all kinds of it going along in through here. And then I don't see too many. There's a hemlock out there. There's a little bit of fir. You're always going to get some fir come back. And there's not too many. But if we, yeah, right there. If we start to look around, here's a yellow birch. There could be a few more kicking around in here. We'll take a little spin around, see what we can see. So yellow birch is a little bit harder to get seeded in. It's a really small seed size, and it actually needs good mineral soil exposure. And where this one was mostly, I would say, fir trees that just died and kind of fell down, but they weren't full tip ups where, you know, you get the root ball and everything tip over and get good mineral soil exposure. didn't have the best seed beds for yellow birch to regenerate into here. So that's actually something we think about in the gaps that we're cutting. You'll see little spots where, you know, the machines are turning or anything and it scuffs it up. You get a little bit of soil exposure, which is you know, initially you worry some about soil disturbance, but as long as they're not cutting deep ruts and everything and just kind of scuffing up the surface, it's actually really good and to our benefit to have a little bit of that going on, so that we can hopefully get some yellow birch started in here. If we don't, we'll come back in a few years' time and have a look and see how the gaps that we've created with the harvester are regenerating, and if we're not getting the I mean, we know, I know from experience that we're going to get the red spruce, but you know, if we're not getting the yellow birch, something else we'd like to see in here is maybe a bit of red oak. There's not much for a natural seed source here, but maybe we'll come back through and plant some oak seedlings or acorns at the very least. But yeah, just take a couple of years to see how things are going, and we'll reassess for what we need to do. So yeah, I don't see not much for birch regeneration. There's some white birch coming right here on the old stump. There's a couple of those. The one on the back side I think is a yellow birch, small one. So, but either way, even without the yellow birch, I mean, you just look around, like these, you know, these white pines are 3 meters tall. There's some red spruce that was probably in here as advanced regeneration anyway. That one's 6 meters tall probably, and then all kinds of this little smaller stuff. So once this small stuff, you know, either in a gap like this one or in the gaps that we've created, reaches that you know, 2.5, 3 meter height class, so you know, for something like this, maybe in 5-6 more years, and the gaps out there 15 years, we'll actually come through with the spacing saws and do pre-commercial thinning, same as, you know, we've done for decades in old clear cuts. It's the same principle, just on a much smaller scale. But so we'll actually come through and thin these out, you know, try and favor for the species that we want. So definitely the white pine, the red spruce in here, try and get rid of a lot of the fir, and yeah, some of the bigger spruces might stay. We might keep them as permanent trees. I mean, it's hard to want to leave all of them. This is some beautiful saw logs here, so you know, as we come along in one of the next harvests, or maybe as some of these blow down, we may come along and either harvest them or salvage them, but just remains to be seen. We'll watch and see how it develops, see what the landowner wants to do. And anyway, but all that long ramble basically just to say that, you know, this is what happens naturally in nature. We're just trying to recreate it in our gaps through a little bit of more intentional approach. Instead of waiting for this to happen, we're just creating it on our own through harvest. So.